Recording now?
We are.
Oh, it's gonna be
Okay, let's roll. Okay, guys, so this is a clause class. And so basically this is what we're going to be doing as far as filling in clauses. I will tell you, most of these clauses were written by, hey, do you want to shut those two doors, please? Thank you so much. Most of these clauses were written by Marie D'Onofrio. That's important because we really should be just filling in the blanks as far as being a realtor and not practicing law by saying, it shall be understood by all parties, like we all like to be like attorneys. And I know we're all, you know, guilty of doing it, but if you cannot have to create a clause and use the ones that we already have that are either from CBR or Marie or some legal entity, that is very wise to do. Okay, so these are in no term. Oh, I forgot to give you guys your copies. These aren't in any kind of order. It's making me really proud.
The important ones.
The important ones
That's
are
right.
here. All right, keep these with you. I mean, like, these are all in dot loop. So like they're all there, but what I found in our dot loop clauses, like a lot of them are duplicates. If it has 3 dots over by the side, then you're able to delete them or, you know, rehash them however you want to, but majority of them will either be created when I was a team leader here, so I have 3 dots on those, but if you created any of your own, you'll have 3 dots so that if you don't like them or want to rechange them in the dot loop clauses, when you bring up all the clauses, does everybody know where to get the clauses in dot loop? Okay, yes, and you guys do too, know where to get the clauses in dot loop?
We shouldn't be acting as lawyers and change.
Right, but I'm
Sure.
saying if you wanted to delete.
Okay.
So, for example, let me show you. So here's like all of our clauses. If you go in, oh, this is really hard to see because this bar, can you go to this bar? So if I go out of here and underneath this little thing that says, it's over here, right here, it says templates. So if you click on templates and then clear down at the bottom under all these different templates for different forms, we also have clauses. And if you click on clauses, all your clauses will be there. What I was talking about is if it has 3 little dots, you can delete them. Otherwise, the office has put those in and you can't delete them. Okay. All right. All right. So let's go back to our clauses. All right. So first one is additional terms and conditions. So we're basically directing, and these aren't in any order. In a perfect world, they'd be in the order of the purchase contract, but they're not. They kind of get added as we go. So they are just in there. So additional terms verbiage, obviously with our paragraph number, I think it's 1.1 in our purchase contract, we're just telling somebody, say, hey, you know, go to the additional terms and conditions page as an integral part of this purchase contract. Pretty simple, huh? You're like, wow, I came to class for this. Yeah, no, there's more other good stuff. And counteroffer, new agents always ask me, what do I say? Thank you for your counteroffer. Buyers agree with all foregoing terms and conditions with the following changes. And remember, when you do a purchase contract, a lot of new agents always say, well, do I have to rewrite the whole thing? No, you're going to accept everything. We accept the price, we accept all the other terms, but we don't accept the closing and possession. So we accept all foregoing terms and conditions with the following changes. And then if you ever add an addendum or additional terms and conditions, typically you always want to write in there all other terms and conditions to remain the same. So we're saying everything else is going to remain the same. Okay, that's just something really important. And if you have a change of a date, let's just say I did want to change the closing date or the possession date, it's always on or before. On or before, even though it seems like, well, why would you write on before when we know we're going to close on July 30th? Well, so that you don't have to rewrite the contract if you closed on the 20th because the appraisal got done quicker than later, then you're all set to go. It's always on or before a closing date. All right, flow test. So now I'm out in the country and I have a well. We want to make sure that you can pump 5 gallons of water, 5 gallons or more, 5 is the minimum, 5 gallons or more from that well And then, so that verbiage is there for well. And then such tests must be completed within the calendar days of acceptance. That would probably coincide with obviously your inspection test, because that's gonna fall under your inspection umbrella of 10 days or whatever the case may be. So those would want to be the same dates, okay? Radon clause, I love this in here. You really don't need it for any reason, because when the purchase contract was redone, good golly, 10 years ago, at one point in time, they put in radon for your inspections to be completed. We've never had radon before. It was always home inspection, termite pests, this and that, but it never specified radon to be done. So we had this clause, but if you had somebody and they were really insistent that they were nervous about radon or wanted to make sure that if that radon test came over 4 becuries, that they could get out of the purchase contract, then you could put this in, and it basically says that if it's over 4.0 becuries, or it has to be below 4.0. So if it comes in at 4.0, which is a horrible place to be as a realtor, anyway, it's like negative 4.1 or 3.9, but not 4.0. But it has to be below 4.0 or the deal is up. So along with a well, you might have a waste disposal system. So this would be for your septic or your sewer rather. The on-site waste disposal system shall conform to current state, county, and municipal requirements. Seller shall have the disposal tank pumped and cleaned, and the size shall conform to today's on-site waste disposal standards. What's it based on, guys? The size of the tank is based on what? For a house. I'm going to go build it. How many bedrooms? Right.
I do listen to you.
You do listen to me. So everyone goes, it's number of people living in the house. Well, not necessarily. I could have a 3-bedroom house and have, a bunch of people, but they do it based on number of bedrooms, should be typically 3 to 4 people. Along with any requirements for additional leaching, grandfathering is not permitted. So if I have a house that's older and it was like, hey, this was put in the 1900s and it went with it, well, that's not conforming. There's you can't, it's not conforming to today's rules and regulations. So you can't grandfather in an old, septic. Okay, so once again with our well water, now we have to have 5 gallons. So you would want to have the flow test and the well quantity clause as well. So if the premise is subject to obtain a private well system, the seller warrants at the time of closing water is available in sufficient quantities. Well, if I had to choose between those two, between the well quantity and the flow test, I'd make sure that it was done, because that's really kind of a vague one. That is in the CVR contracts clauses, but I would definitely want to make sure that I used the first one that we talked about, the flow test, to make sure you were getting 5 gallons per minute. But that's there. So just know that if I saw both of them, I would choose the flow test contingency over the other one. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Backup offer. Okay, now we're writing a backup offer to an offer that's already gone into contract with someone else. So this is a backup offer, subject and contingent upon the release and the primary obligations created under the pending executory contract to purchase real estate between the seller and a third party. Okay, so it's contingent on the seller and somebody else, whoever got there before us. This backup offer may be rescinded by the buyer at any time prior to the receipt and notice from the seller the waiver of this condition. So I always tell my agents to be careful that when you do a backup offer, you always either say this offer is contingent upon getting out of this offer, or get out of this offer before writing another offer, because you don't want to buy 2 houses, because the phone could ring at any time, or you could get an email saying you're in the primary position. So if I've already sent an offer to Joan, I'm in a backup position. Now I find another house. I'm like, I'll keep this one because I don't want to give it up, but I'll try for Joan's and then I'll give this one up. Well, that could backfire on you. So either make Joan's offer contingent on the release of this. Well, those people may say, well, oh, okay, but are you serious or not? I mean, if you're in a dual offer situation, I wouldn't take that offer. I would rescind this one and tell your folks, hey, okay, we're giving up this one. Now, chances are we can't go back and be a backup offer on this guy because we already said, sorry, we're going with somebody else. So that's a discussion that you have to have with your buyers. Does that make sense? Perfect. Now that's a short backup offer. The second one is very detailed, which once again, I would suggest using, more of a detailed clause if I could. And it goes into and it says same thing. It's backup offer secondary to an existing purchase contract, which shall be referred to the primary contract. The buyers are accepted in the following modifications or additions. 1, sellers are presently in contract. As we know that this counteroffer is accepted by the buyer shall be a backup offer to the primary contract, which is scheduled to close on or before you would find that out. Okay. If for any reason the primary contract is terminated, sellers will provide a written notice to the buyers upon delivery of the buyer's agents, and they will be considered the primary contract. 2, sellers reserve the right to make modifications or additions to the terms and conditions of the primary contract, which shall not in any way affect the buyer's position in the backup position. They can do whatever they want to. It doesn't affect our position. Which shall not, we said that. The buyer's deposit check shall be due and payable within 24 hours. So if we're going to put down earnest money, it's due in 24 hours. Number 3, all time periods specified start when you are chosen as the primary contract. Number 4, the buyers acknowledge that they are the backup contract. However, they reserve the right to terminate this without any liability anytime prior to the receipt of the written notice. So you can get out of it at any time. You do find that perfect house that comes on the market the next day. You can rescind it at any time and not be, hand slapped. Who does backup offers in here? As you should. I mean, it can't hurt. Why are backup offers good to do right now?
Because a lot of people can't get to the finish line.
And a lot of buyers are buying under duress because all of a sudden they're in an open house, there's 50 people there, it's a madhouse, they get it and they're like, oh my gosh, they wake up the next morning with buyer's remorse and go, what the heck did we just do? I want out of this deal. They bought it under a lot of pressure. And they're like, we paid too much, so we'll get out of it during the home inspection, which they can. There's always something you can get out of.
And we do tell your buyer, but I think we talked about this in our office. Doing it too, it can also make a seller use that backup offer to keep the primary person in line to say, hey, and that's been done to me. Well, we have backup offer, so.
Right.
You
So
know.
if there's a request to remedy or a home inspection,
There's a chance you take that you're just going to be the
you are a pawn.
catalyst to keep them going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, release from prior contract. So now I'm in contract. And so it says acceptance of this contract is contingent upon seller obtaining release from a prior purchase contract dated. That's when I said, hey, rather than just release it, this is the one where I sent to Joan and now it's contingent on me getting out of that contract to buy yours. Chances are you're going to be in a multiple offer situation. You're never going to use this clause, but if we go back to the old days, you might. Escape from sale of existing home contingency, okay? Buyers and sellers agree they have the right to continue to market the property until the buyer removes or waives the sale of existing home contingency. We're never going to use this, by the way, these days. In the event that the seller receives another bona fide offer, or that's another word for written offer, it has to be in writing, offer to purchase the property, which is non-contingent upon the sale of a home, seller may, at seller's option, give written notice to the buyer's broker that the seller has received a bona fide offer. Buyer shall have, how many hours? I say 24. They don't need more than 24 hours to say, oh, okay, we'll take your offer. So it's hours from the receipt of the notice to remove or waive the contract, waive the sale of existing home contingency, and proceed to close in accordance with the terms of this contract. If within the time specified above, the buyer does not remove or waive the sale of existing home contingency of this contract, the contract shall terminate and the earnest money deposit shall be returned to the buyer pursuant to paragraph 10. You know what? I think that's supposed to be paragraph 12 right now. This mistake here. our earnest money paragraph in the purchase contract is 12.
Is what?
Is 12. It's paragraph 12, not paragraph 10.
Oh,
Buyer's removal or waiver of the sale of the existing home sale contingency shall also be confirmation that the buyer's financing is not contingent upon the sale of the home. So chances are, we're not gonna take an offer, but I've seen it, like you have to sell your house to buy another one, okay? So they're just saying, hey, you agree that, to take my contingency of, home sale contingency. Okay. Investment properties, this is awesome. I would never write on an investment property without this. This offer is contingent upon the buyer's satisfactory review of all leases, rental agreements, deposits, past, I'd probably say 2 years income and expense reports within, they can get it to you in 14 days, 7 days. After the acceptance of this offer, seller shall provide such documents and information representing them to be true and accurate within blank calendar days after acceptance. During the pendency and the term of this contract, seller shall not change any existing lease, enter into new leases, or make any substantial alterations or repairs without consent of the buyer. Failure by the buyer to notify the seller and the seller's broker in writing within the calendar day shall constitute an election by the buyer to proceed with the transaction. So it's kind of like the paragraph that we have in our purchase agreement for the HOA. Like you're giving them X amount of time to see the leases and the expense reports. They call them rent rolls. So yeah. Any questions on that?
No, you were right about paragraph 12.
Yeah, it is paragraph 12. Yeah, so that should be,
we'll change that.
mark that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably an old one. That's I left a lot of the old ones in their clauses. Okay, multiple offers. So this is, we used to call this indisputable right to choose. So let's just say the seller, which we could see this, there's multiple offers, and the seller says, hey, I have the indisputable right to choose whichever offer I want. Great. So for the property located 123 Main Street, seller is submitting a counteroffer to more than one offer. So you're telling them right up front, I have submitted a counteroffer to you, you, and you, and whoever comes back and I like, I will choose. Right now, what we're doing is we're just saying, give me your highest and best by Sunday at 8 p.m. Same thing, but before we didn't really have that much. So we had this contingency. Seller reserves the right to accept any offer, to make counteroffers to any other person, and shall have no obligation to sell the property to any prospective purchaser. If seller's counteroffer is accepted by more than one prospective purchaser, no acceptance of the seller's counteroffer shall be binding or constitute a valid purchase agreement until the seller reaffirms which counteroffer is accepted. So they're basically going to come back and say, hey, I'm going to take this one, and you would fill out the bottom of that clause. Okay. Yeah, it's on the page. I think it goes over to the other page. That might be easier to read off of here.
So you could put that in a purchase contract. As a buyer.
No, you put that in the purchase contract as the seller going back to the other
Yeah,
agent.
okay.
So like if I had 3 offers and I hadn't called for highest and best, I could send this to them and say, hey, I have the indisputable right to choose any of you guys. Okay. Okay. And they have to validate the acceptance and acknowledgement of that too. So they have to say, yes, we got this. We understand that you have the right to choose. Okay. I meant to take out the attorney review. We don't need this anymore because it's in our purchase contract now. So just X that out. This one we can use a lot, contingent upon suitable housing. Seller's acceptance of this offer to the purchase contingent upon the seller's ability to execute a contract to purchase a property located within. I mean, you could go as far as 90 days these days. We're seeing this a lot, and this is the verbiage that you would use. This contingency is to be removed or waived in writing by the seller within the time period, or this contract shall be null and void. So you're just saying, hey, give me 90 days to find a house, and if I don't, you're out. So it's kind of risky, but if you want to wait for the house, that's what we got to do these days. Okay, now this is a buyer's cap on request to remedy. In the event the items per buyer's inspections and or tests are less than $5,000 in aggregate, then the seller shall not be responsible for any repairs, remedies, or credits to the purchase price. Now that $5,000 could be anything. And it's funny, this one can go either way. It can say, hey, I won't ask for anything that's under, you know, like, I'm not gonna like hit you for the, like, the little piddly things. So I'm not gonna say, hey, I want the, you know, the boot that's not attached, and I want that broken seal fixed, and I want this and that and that. So I'm not going to ask for anything under $1,000. And it's also saying in this one, I'm not, well, that one is saying under. You can also do it the other direction, say, I won't ask for anything over X amount of dollars. So if you want to put a cap on the request to remedy, but to be honest with you, I haven't written a contract that has anything but 0 in the request to remedy period for about 2 years. Everything is being sold as is.
Why do we say in the aggregate?
Altogether. So all of the things
Okay.
like that, and that, I want everything all together to be under or over $5,000.
Because I'm thinking if you got 5, so it seems like it's redundant, but I guess it's not.
It is
Okay.
kind of redundant.
Yeah.
I didn't make this one. Okay. Closing costs. I mean, you still can write one with closing costs. I did this a few weeks ago. Seller agrees to pay at closing up to a maximum of $3,000 of buyer's allowable closing costs and or lender buy down points. It's always important to put lender buy down points, because what if I had one offer come in and they wanted like $8,000 worth of closing costs? I was like, well,
Oh, really?
we can't use that, but they hadn't put the lender buy down points. So what that means is, okay, we used $3,000 towards our closing costs, great, used them all up. I have an extra $5,000 hanging out there. So with that $5,000, I could go to the lender, and I think it's 1/8 of a point equals 1 point of money. So I could say, here's another $5,000 to buy my rate down from 3.0 to 2.75, whatever the case may be. So you can actually buy down the points with money.
Except now you're saying it's the other way around, that the buyers are paying the seller's closing costs sometimes.
Exactly.
I don't know.
And that's not in here actually, but that's a really good point. So we do see like, I always put it in bold because we're so used to seeing that, oh, closing costs, why would I pay for closing costs now? No. I always highlight it. If I do say the buyer to pay up to $5,000 of seller's closing costs, and I bold sellers.
Good.
Or I make it, you can't bold it because in dot loop, everything bolds. But if you put it in capitals, then they understand it's the sellers. What are the sellers' closing costs? What's the big thing in sellers' closing costs? Not
Title insurance.
something bigger than that.
Prorations.
Commissions.
Oh, commission.
So because we have 3-4 really smart people here, and that didn't come right out, you might want to put, pay up to $5,000 of seller's commission or closing costs. I would probably put in parentheses, agent's commissions. So you're not paying for me. So yes, but you can, that's another clause that should be on here, which I'll write down. What was I gonna say something? Oh, I know. So what is the, okay, I have a $100,000 house and I have $1 million house. So is it a percentage that go with the price of the house for closing costs? Does $1 million house have a lot more closing costs?
Yeah,
than-
there's a chart that Cecilia's given us before, right? There's a different math formula you use to figure it out every per 1,000.
Is there?
Not on
Is
the
there?
loan side, I don't think so. No, there's no
Oh,
title insurance. Yes, that's based
Maybe
on your
that's what
sales
you get.
price.
But the other ones are not.
No, yeah.
So, I mean, like, don't think that, I mean, typically a closing cost could be about $3,000 to $4,000.
Yeah. They're typically not gonna be much.
So it's not going to be a whole lot more, even if it's $1 million house, I'm not gonna be paying, ooh, it's got about $15,000 worth of closing costs because it's $1 million house. No. Let's
It's
say,
the commissions.
it's the title closing or the
Yeah.
closing
Title
matters.
insurance.
Yeah, you tell us, girl.
Yeah, the title insurance is based per thousand.
Right,
That's what I was
Per
thinking.
thousand of your sales price, so that's what costs more.
but nothing else
changes.
does.
She did a class on it, I remember. I have this chart, but I couldn't think of what it was.
Yeah.
So,
A
Good.
lot of people are like, oh, gosh, I never thought about that. So we
Yeah.
put a lot more money in the buyer's closing costs and they just don't need it. Seller's assistance program clause. I love this in here. Only because that is out there. I mean, in a different market, we might use this. Sellers agree to participate where they basically gift over money to help the buyers close the house. We're not gonna be using that anytime near future. Okay, so addendum A and addendum B. That's this one, addendum A, and then down here is addendum B. So on addendum B and addendum A, it is the exact same verbiage except for one line. A is for your sellers to use this paragraph. B, addendum B, is for your buyers to use this. And the only difference is this. So let's look at addendum B, and it says, because typically a buyer is going to write this anyway. So addendum B is sellers escape buyer's obligations are contingent upon the sale and closing of the buyer's current residence. So once again, I have a house to sell located at 123 Fair Avenue within, let's say, 45 days. Okay, I'm going to get that house in contract and close in 45 days. It's agreed that the seller's property may retain on the open market. Okay, I can have it out there. MLS is going to say you have to put it in with contingent escape. A lot of people are trying not to do that, and they're writing it in the purchase contract and say, hey, everybody understand, I am not going to put this in as contingent escape in MLS. I guess, Broker Joan, if everybody agrees to that, that's okay. If MLS finds out about it, you'll probably get a fine.
You get a fine, yes. And I always say, I mean, honestly, I prefer to go by the MLS rules. So I just had one and I kind of called the other agent who is a broker also. And finally he said, you're right, Joan. So they did put it in as contingent.
Good.
But I know it's not.
Why do the sellers want it in as contingent with an escape?
Well, they want to get a better offer.
And a lot of people don't bid on those because they're like, oh, I don't want to upset the apple cart, or it's going to be a pain to, get them out and me in.
And Tim Real says those are the best ones to bid on, the ones that have a contingent.
He's
home to
right.
sell. Yep,
Okay, so
Tim Real says.
in the event the seller receives another acceptable written, has to be written, offer, and it says without a home sale contingency, this contract shall terminate and the deposit shall be returned to the buyer unless the buyer within 24 hours from receipt of written notification of the other offer by the seller or the seller agent does one of two things. They remove the contingency in writing, and they provide the seller with a letter from the lender saying they don't need, they don't need to sell the house in order to buy this one. So either get rid of the house, so I've got 24 hours. I really didn't want to have to do a bridge loan. So, but I can't get my house sold and I really don't want to lose this house. So I'm giving you a letter from my lender saying, we're good to go. I don't have to sell my house. I can get a bridge loan. So it's got to be one or the other.
Mhm.
If buyers elect to remove the home sale contingencies, all parties agree to close this transaction within usually 30 calendar days after written notice of other acceptable offer. Now, why is that without home sale contingency for the buyers important? Why is that bold?
Because you're just replacing one with the same thing. It's the same issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's think about that. I take an offer and they have a house, $1 million house in Tartan Fields to sell. This guy has $1 million house in Grandview to sell. Grandview. Which is going to sell faster? I mean, probably. The Grandview house. Chances are that Grandview house is going to sell faster, or maybe this guy, has a house that's in, I don't know, someplace that's harder to sell than this one. So as Mr. Seller, hey, you know what? I want it not to have that without a home sale contingency. That they also have one. So now if I'm Mr. Buyer, I'm going to go along with what Stacy said and say, wait a minute, don't bump me for somebody who's in the same boat. You know, it's like, come on. If somebody comes along and they don't have a house to sell and I do, I get it, I'll bow out gracefully. But Mr. Seller may say, hey, I would like the indisputable right to choose which one. So once again, if I represent the seller and I want to counter back with this one, counter back that one. If I'm the buyer, I would prefer to have without a home sale contingency. Don't bump me for somebody in the same boat. Okay, make sense? Cool. Okay, so the next three paragraphs are all about tax proration, okay? So basically what that is saying is that, and this is a hard one. If I have a lot and I have a new build, there's one specifically for new build, it's the second one down. It says the parties acknowledge and understand that the amount of taxes charged for the time prior to the closing may change after closing. Yes, it's going to go up. It is the intent of the buyer and the seller for each to pay for the real estate taxes due and billed for the time that they own the property, okay? So I have a lot and the taxes are $300 a year, okay? I build a house on it. I build a $500,000 house on that. Now my taxes are $10,000 a year. So Mr. Builder, you should pay for the taxes during the time that you own that house. So when the tax bill, we all know that our tax bills come out a year in arrears. So when the tax bill comes out for the time that the Mr. Builder owned the house, it's going to take maybe up to a year for them to catch up with the time. So Mr. Builder should pay for those taxes. Now, if you're Mr. Builder and you're MI, Rockford, you know, just the regular Ryan Homes, they're going to go, no, 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 no. You're buying a new house. You as the agent need to inform them that their taxes are going to go up. If you work with a custom home builder or maybe a builder that's had the lot for a longer amount of time, that's more of a, not a tract home builder, they may say, okay, we'll build that into the cost of it. So Mr. Buyer's paying for it anyway, but we agree to that. But I mean, at least as an agent, it's good to try and get that. So because Mr. Buyer is paying for that house. Mr. Builder is paying for that house during the time that Mr. Builder owned it.
What if it's separate transactions? Like they buy the lot from the developer and then they go with a custom home and they're doing it like through, you know, their own is, you know, to do pre-construction. So the builder's never buying the lot.
Right.
They bought
So then his due diligence is gone when they sell the lot because he only owned the lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So that wouldn't be the case. So then it basically says, therefore, parties agree that following the adjustments will be made after closing, because in our purchase contract, it says in bold print down around, I don't know what paragraph that is, maybe 9. And it basically says that all anything after closing will not change. But this is saying, no, this supersedes that. And this is going to change because they're going to pay those taxes after the bill comes out, if appropriate, and superseding the terms in the paragraph titled taxes and assessment. That's the paragraph I'm talking about. Within 10 days of receipt of verification of change in taxes. So what happens is the auditor has like a little, like if a big house comes across and crosses the auditor's table, they say, ooh, go out there quicker. That's a $500,000 house, because they don't know that this house was built on this lot, but they see the deed come across, okay? And they're like, hey, go put that at the top of your list, because why? They're gonna get more money. Who gets the majority of the money from our taxes? Like 75%. If you break down the taxes, who's getting the 75%? Schools. So all of the schools, like if you have like a waiver or anything, actually, or like if you feel like your value of your house isn't what it should be, and like you're getting taxed too much, the school has to okay that. So within 10 days, the letter, you close on the house, and nowadays that 10 days wouldn't come probably for maybe a couple months, because the deeds aren't being recorded until 6 to 8 weeks. So, you know, one thing I found very interesting with Title Connect is because Now that the deeds aren't being recorded for 6 to 8 weeks, there's a huge liability for buyers. Because does your title insurance gap, is it covered? So if you're not using Title Connect, you need to be talking to whatever title company that they're using to make sure gap is provided, the insurance gap. We use Old Republic with Title Connect, and they provide the gap. Now the
Automatically, or is that something the buyer has to say?
automatically with Title Connect. Now, the state has said, hey, we're not going to change this. We're still going to just do it this way. And it is going to continue to be 6 to 8 weeks. And Old Republic, who's the underwriter, has said, we will continue to give your buyers the gap coverage, because could a mechanics lien be filed on that? Very easily. Then your people are the owners. They're stuck with the mechanics lien. They can't sell the house. So it's awesome that whatever title company you have, make sure they have gap coverage. A lot of them don't. I bet most agents don't even know about
I never
this.
thought to ask
They're not
that.
thinking, they're not thinking about it.
And it makes it real easy for us to write into on our purchase contract, we want to use Title Connect, or, you know, if you love somebody else, just make sure that you have an underwriter that has gap coverage.
Do we know why it's taking so long to get deeds recorded?
COVID.
I
Backlog.
Can't
Backlog.
anything.
They're backlog.
Backlog, wouldn't they just hire more people? I know.
So,
You're
okay.
talking about the state.
So
I know.
in Cleveland, they email them the same day.
Some we can, some we can't. Some lenders won't, you got, there is a delicate balance. There's so many moving parts that you don't know who will accept. And, or if there's something about the document that's different, they can't send it electronically. There's something about a you know, there's a lot of
Ins and outs.
Yeah. There's a lot of ins and outs as to who, you know, they have to look it over and say, okay, yes, this one can go, or this one has this problem. Nope, it's got to go down originally. You know, it's a balance. It's a
Well, I think
balance.
that's a good word that we need to get out. Yes, about the gap coverage.
Oh, it's huge.
Yes, yeah.
I just learned about it last week and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oy."
We'll do that.
So within 10 days of getting the letter saying, hey, guess what? Your taxes are 300, now they're 15,000. The seller shall reimburse the buyer for the difference between the proration given. Okay, but they were given, you know, 250.
300, yeah.
And now they will have that time, and they can't give it to you at the time of closing because they don't know when the letter's going to be received. So at that time, they recalculate the taxes and figure that out. Could the same thing happen on an existing house? Sure. You buy an old house down in German Village, it's $140,000. And you rehab it and you turn it into the Taj Mahal and sell it for $750. The taxes don't catch up with the sale. So, and that's real important. The same thing works. So now the taxes are $140,000 house, I don't know, $4,000. Now it's 700, now it's $14,000. So there's a $10,000 gap. Mr. Seller, you're the one who made it into the Taj Mahal, not me. You pay for the taxes until, or give me a credit, because I'm going to get the bill for the time that you own the house. That's hard to understand. And if you need me to go through that with you one-on-one, I can. Okay, so those 3 letters go for, like, if it's a typical house, there's a new build letter, and then the clause for just new builds in general. Seller to buy another property. We already had this one. So skip that one, we need to take it out. Okay, builder. So if you're writing a purchase contract, and typically we always use their purchase contract, but sometimes builders will let you slide in an addendum or additional terms and conditions rather. Just make sure you put a BIA warranty included in every one. Typically they are. Earnest money. Okay, so earnest money clarification on release of earnest money. If the transaction fails, okay, so what they're saying is that if you feel like this is going to be trouble getting the earnest money, you know, back, or you want to get it back, if the transaction fails to close, the broker must maintain the earnest money in his or her account until the parties provide him with the written instructions by both parties, both buyer and seller have to sign a court order. So you've gone to small claims court What's the new amount for small claims court? The minimum amount
Is it 3,000?
went up
5,000?
5,000. It used to be 3. So we never want to take earnest money more than 3, but now it's 5.
Well, why would we use that when it's already in the contract?
I think it's in there just because if you're just worried,
Okay,
and
just
you
to
want to
really
reiterate it,
clarify it instead of big paragraph
Yeah.
12, maybe.
like it has to be both parties written instruction, or you wait
Yeah.
2 years. Does it say that? It doesn't even say wait. Yeah, it does. Or court order. No, it doesn't even say wait 2 years. You just have to have either the, what's the form that we sign that's by both parties? What is that
Mutual
called?
release.
What was it called?
Smarty pants.
Broker. It's called mutual release.
Oh, okay.
And that's an old form, and it's a golden one that you don't, I mean, like, I would just use even with the termination of contract. So termination of contract, only form that we have that requires one signature. A buyer can terminate the contract. I'm out, I'm done. Now, getting the earnest money back is a whole different ballgame. That has to be signed by both. So most people, and I'm sure Joan would advise, send the termination of contract. I don't want your house anymore. We had a crappy home inspection.
Yeah.
Now I want my earnest money back. And that takes both signatures. And that legally says you can't come back, you can't sue me, you can't come after my heirs, my signs, nothing. It's a oldie but a goodie. So send those both together. Okay.
Separate forms, but at the same time.
Mhm. And now the seller can put the house back on the market, the buyer can go buy another house, because how many times do people ask, can I go look for another house? Are we really terminated because they didn't get their earnest money back? Yes.
Yeah.
You've terminated the contract.
Yeah.
One signature, buyer can terminate the contract. Seller does not have to agree. They have to agree to give you back your earnest money. And that's why so many people aren't getting earnest money. So if I'm a buyer, I would give earnest money just to get the house these days. Propane tanks. So you have to make sure you understand the disposition of the propane tank. So it's contingent on the buyer's satisfaction regarding the tank ownership. Is it leased or do the people own it? If you think you're getting it and it's leased, you may have a little surprise. The purchase price includes all the propane because they will come in and take the propane because propane is expensive. And you don't want it to be the dead of winter, your little family with the baby moves in and they have no heat because you didn't put this contract or this faucet. Okay, so, oh, we like this one. Buyer selects Title Connect agency. And this is another great reason. This is just basically saying, hey, we would like Title Connect to close our deal, or like, no offense, but if you have another one, like you love and adore something else, you can, as a buyer, decide who you want to use. HER does it every single time. Coldwell Banker does it every single time. Why can't we?
Right.
Okay, so here's the appraisal contingency. Pursuant to 3.2, which is the appraisal contingency or paragraph, offer is contingent upon lender appraisal. If the property is appraised for less than the purchase price, buyer agrees to pay the difference between the appraised value and the purchase price, not to exceed $10,000. However, if the property is appraised for more than $10,000 less than the purchase price, buyer retains the right to the appraisal contingency, saying that I can get out of the deal if the house doesn't appraise. Once again, that would be just to reiterate. I mean, or you might want to use the one below it, which is a little less worded, to be honest with you. I like the one below it. And it just basically says, in the event the home doesn't appraise for the agreed purchase price, buyer agrees to pay the difference between the appraisal price and the contract price not to exceed $5,000, $10,000. Final purchase agreed price in writing by both buyer and seller. Because you got to know, what am I buying? A lot of times people don't put that in, and I think it's kind of odd. Because if it appraises, I go in at 300 and I said, I give you a $10,000 appraisal price. Okay, let's just say it appraised at 305. Well, I need to know what the purchase price is for my lender. So it has to be agreed upon, and another piece of paper would go out saying the purchase price is now 305. It's about to say something terribly important about that. Oh, so let's just say I'm doing a cash deal, okay? Does 3.2 apply the appraisal paragraph in our purchase contract does that apply to our contract if I'm doing a cash deal?
Appraisal being done for a lender.
There you go. Because it says specifically in 3.2, the appraisal is for lending purposes. But what if I'm a cash buyer and I want to have an appraisal of my home and contingent upon that? Can I write that
Write
in?
it in.
I can write it in. That's not in there, but you can absolutely do that, but don't assume you can have it because there's an appraisal clause, because the appraisal clause, it's for lending purposes only. And you need to cover my purchase contract cost too. That's a good one. That is good.
Can you just email us your class list?
Okay, okay, so we got earnest money deposit. This was kind of COVID related. When the transaction closes, the earnest money will be applied as a credit to the buyer and a debt to the buyer broker. Realtor's commission on the settlement statement is understood by all parties that there will be no check issued. So during COVID, when we didn't want to do all the checks and everything, and Coldwell Banker does this on every single
I
deal.
know.
So basically, if it's a $5,000, let's say you're getting $10,000 in commission, your earnest money that's being held, $5,000 is being held by, here at the office. And then so your check would be dropped to $5,000. That additional $5,000 would not go from the check to them back. It would just go straight into your account and make you whole for your $10,000.
I really like that.
I do
I
too.
do.
It's a lot easier.
And you don't have to
Less
remember to
paperwork.
get the check, and you
Less
guys don't
paperwork.
have to do it. I mean, sometimes people go, wow, what does this mean? But I mean, if you explain it to them.
Yeah.
Pictures and equipment, like all current kitchen appliances as seen on, why is that important to say when you've seen it on that day?
Because they'll switch it out.
You could
Yeah.
switch it out. You could go in there and see beautiful stainless steel, but they've got an all crappy old black refrigerator in the basement. Or, you want to see the ones that we saw on that date in the
Yeah.
kitchen.
And you also had me add the MLS number, which I do as seen, and then I had the MLS number. That was your.
Yep.
From your other.
You know,
can
I
add
just
that.
had a call yesterday from an agent because in the listing, it said that the swing set was going to stay with the house.
Yeah.
And then at the house, it had like a fact sheet and one of the bullet points was the swing set stays with the house.
They took it.
Well, the sellers took it and my agent didn't write it in and I go, you know what? It's just, whatever it says in the contract that stays, you still have to write it in.
If in doubt, write it in.
Write it in. So
Absolutely.
he's probably gonna be out about 1,500.
Because what does it say on the bottom of every MLS sheet?
Oh,
All information is guaranteed but not warranted.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, no, all information is thought to
Some-
be true but not warranted If there's an
Yeah,
escape
something,
clause.
yeah.
on the bottom of the MLS. So if you screw up and put
Write it
something
in.
in, you have an escape, but you don't have an escape as a buyer's agent if you don't put it in the purchase agreement.
Hey, I bought a washer and dryer a couple of years ago, Kate's house, because I'm at the house doing the walkthrough with my people and the people haven't moved out yet. And so the listing agent comes and goes, hey, Joni, they don't want to move that washer and dryer stackable unit. They don't want to move that. Would your buyers like it? I go, you want it? And they go, yeah, would love it. And I go, okay, we'll take it. Well, they took it. I did not write an addendum to say that it was staying. So I bought them a washer and dryer.
Everything I ever learned in real estate cost me money.
Exactly.
Very true statement.
Yes.
That's a copy mug.
So, and then spell them out as seen on, July 25th, 2021, to include range, microwave, dishwasher, microwave, refrigerator, all TV brackets,
Mhm.
because they're gonna take the TV and then when they tear down that TV bracket, it's got big old holes in the wall, and chances are it might fit another TV. Or you might wanna say, remove the TV brackets and patch and paint the, however you want that to go. All bathroom mirrors, can't tell you how many of those I bought. Everything I've learned in real estate cost me money. Because they're hanging on a hook, so if I turn that house upside down and I shake it,
Will it fall off?
That mirror is gonna fall off, just like a picture. You don't expect their pictures to stay, nor would you that.
Yeah.
Front porch swing, the hooks will stay, but the swing's gone. Pan racks, the hooks stay, but the pans are gone, and the pan rack is gone. That's a real business.
You can't. help everybody.
Okay, escalation clause. Purchase price shall be $250,000. Should another bona fide offer from another party be received exceeding the current purchase price of $250,000, the buyer will pay $10,000 more than the highest competing net. What do I mean by net, and why is that in bold? Why is it net?
Well, if we're adding, or if there are other contingencies that reduce.
What would be the contingency that would reduce the price?
Appraisal.
Could,
An agent reducing a commission,
it's usually closing costs.
closing.
So at that
costs.
time, the time we accept this, we don't know this, but they have an offer and they're offering
Mhm.
250 and they're paying for $5,000. That's not a 250 offer, it's a 245.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm said, I'll be $10,000 more. I'm going up to 255, not 250 to 260. So it's got to be the net,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
or the people will put the screws to you.
Yes.
So it's the net offer. And how are we gonna make them honest? Well, we're gonna say, listing agent to provide the copy of the next highest executed purchase agreement of competing offer within 24 hours of acceptance. Once again, final agreed purchase price to be in writing. What are we paying in this house? Cool. All right. Oh, now this is a detail. Where am I? This is a detailed, and this is exactly the same thing, but it's just a little bit more detailed. The following items will apply to increase the sales price in this offer. In the event to receive one or more additional offer, we're gonna have to go higher. I mean, it's the same exact same thing. The only thing that's different than this, in the event the other offers cause the escalation sales price in this offer, the seller will provide the copy to justify the sales price. In the event they agree to accept the purchase price within the terms, the seller will submit a buyer counteroffer with the sales price. So the other one just said, hey, we want it to be in writing. This one says they're calling it a counteroffer. Same thing. I kind of like the detailed one. If you're worried, the detailed one is,
So,
as you said, more is better.
so what would you do in this instance? You've written this and the other agent says, no, they're not going to provide it. So what do? They're not going to provide.
I call my broker Joan and say, get on with their broker and throw a fit.
Good idea. All right.
I don't know.
Write that down, Jen.
I know they said, but they said you agreed to it. Why wouldn't they? Is that happening? They're not giving them?
That would probably mean they really didn't have it, so
Oh. But that would make me angry.
I know.
Our pants on fire.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but I mean, I would go to their broker and say, look, they need to provide this or.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like I've seen them A or B, purchase
Mhm.
price to be $250,000, A. Option B, in the event of a multiple offer, will go blah, 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 $5,000 higher. So I guess I would, if it was written that way, I'd go back to, hey, well, then it's $250,000.
Mhm.
I haven't seen the A and B for a while because
Okay.
we always know we're in a multiple offer situation. Before, we didn't know if we were gonna be in one. So it's you choose option A or option B, which is great, because it's like, you have a 2-year-old for breakfast and you say, what do you want for breakfast? And they go, I want Cocoa Puffs and, Pop-Tarts. But if you give a 2-year-old a choice and say, you can have eggs, or you can have, I don't know, something else healthy. Well, they're like, oh, I get to choose. Well, they had 2 healthy choices.
Uh-huh.
So it's the same thing, Mr. Seller, you can choose A, or you can choose B. There are 2 choices that benefit me. But I haven't seen option A or B for a long time. Okay, this is called an offer enhancement. If the sellers accept buyer's offer before, 5 p.m. on July 22nd, purchase price is going to be, like stated in section 1, $250,000. if you go past the deadline, purchase price then becomes $235. So you can just say, if you want to push them
Mhm.
and say, look, you have 24 hours to accept this offer, and it's gonna be, you can choose. We hear a lot about this on our panels, the non-refundable deposit. And this is good right now. Deposit to seller upon purchase contract acceptance, buyers to pay a seller $5,000 non-refundable deposit within 3 days of fully executed purchase contract by all parties. An additional $5,000 non-refundable deposit will be paid directly upon the buyer's delivering notice of satisfactory inspection. So you can pay them more money if the inspection, and once we get past the inspection, I'll give you another $1,000. This is if you really want the house. In regards to earnest money deposit of the $5,000 indicated in 12.1, I'm sorry, the earnest money deposit, this is non-refundable deposit, let's say it's 5 and 1. Then I'm also giving earnest money deposit of 3. Now that $3,000 is going to be in paragraph 12.1 of the original purchase contract. This amount is going to be held and dispersed as per paragraph 12.1. They're different animals. Non-refundables, the buyer literally writes a check and says, here's $5,000 3 days after accepted my contract. Thank you for letting me get your house. So when you explain the offer, excuse me, I'm sneezing a cough. When you explain the offer and it's $250, you're gonna say, well, really it's $253 because I'm giving them $3,000 if they take my offer.
Indication of your teaching skills, we gotta go to a closing.
Okay, well, we're almost done anyway. Let's go. Yeah, actually,
Thank you.
yeah.
Bye. See you next time.
Oh, yes.
Curb offer. This offer is contingent upon buyers review the property within 24 hours of contract acceptance. Buyer's agent to notify the listing agent within 1 hour of walkthrough as to the buyer's acceptance of the property. It could be 1 hour, it could be 2 hours, but I mean, that needs to be super fast. Like you get, and if I see it coming soon, the beginning of the week, you want to do your curb offer as soon as possible so that you could literally, the people will never know there were curb offers. I could be on the market, have a contract, negotiate it, and then, but I would have to mark it as active to get into it again. So it would start earlier. And post-closing possession. This is basically just saying, hey, if the parties agreed that the sellers will retain possession after closing, the parties agreed, the sellers right to post-closing possession shall expire at 5 p.m. on July 21st at 2021. Number 2, seller has to obtain insurance for the seller's possessions and liability insurance for injury and damage that occurred during the post-closing possession. Why is that important to the buyer? Why do we have that in here?
In case they knocked a hole in the wall or a broken window or something like that happened that wasn't.
But the buyer's got insurance. So I'm covered. We're making the seller get insurance. Why are we making the seller get
In
insurance?
case their items like renter's insurance is what you're saying. So in case their clothes and their computers and their personal items.
I don't
are
care about them. Why do I care? Okay, so there's water damage. I'm covered. I'm covered.
Mhm.
I have insurance. I have to have insurance before I buy the house.
Right.
Why do I care about the sellers having insurance? Their insurance.
I thought it was just for their items, for their personal items, so that you don't go back and sue the homeowner like your water thing broke and ruined all my stuff.
It's important because if they make claims on the house, it affects the buyer's insurance rates.
Mhm.
So if something would happen,
Oh.
they make a huge claim. I'm married to an insurance man.
Right.
He's just,
Yeah.
I didn't know that about him either.
I
Oh
know,
my
I was like, well,
gosh.
why do I care if their stuff
Yeah, I
gets
know.
flooded out? They were stupid. They didn't get renter's insurance. And he's
Oh,
like, no,
my
Tracy.
gosh.
The reason is because the claims that they make will be on their policy, not the buyer's.
Oh, I didn't know
So-
that. That's so good.
Do you recommend that you do this? Because now we've seen so much of this. If it's like a 2-week, if it's that's something that's interesting. Is this like a 30-day? We have
I
30
don't know what
days.
the magic number is. I mean, I always put it in there. I mean. do we
I think
have
when I
the-
did like the one in Camden Lakes, we said that the homeowners who sold the house had to
So there's
still
one,
maintain all their insurance and everything, but
there's one down here that is kind of like a lesser one. The the last paragraph is a little bit more like, there's, in like this one, it's like in bold print, it says buyer and seller advise to consult with their insurance agent, da, 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 da. It's much more, the first one of these two is much more, I don't know, intense. And it's basically saying that they have to prove that they have the insurance.
Mhm.
The one below it is basically saying like, hey, we suggest that you get it. I mean, I might use that for 2 weeks.
But in general, because I've had to do this now 3 or 4 times, what I've started to look at is can we push the closing date out as far as we can, still keep their interest rate, and I'll talk to the lender and say, how far can we take this? Because then maybe it's only like 3
But most
weeks or
sellers
2
are gonna be
weeks.
like, no, 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 no. I want this sucker to close so I can go on and
It's
do my
happening, but I
thing.
tried to, but just because I think this is crazy that they're staying in the house for a month because of all these
Well,
between things.
why else? Like, what's the
They're not
limit for a
landlords.
lender?
Well,
Lenders,
They require, like, that's why sometimes,
60 days.
yeah, I think like the one on came like they were allowed to go 90 days. It didn't send a red flag, but I just think that's gonna be something that's gonna come up. It's interesting.
Different
doing it so
lenders
much.
have different time amounts. Like I had one go through and they were gonna stay 90 days and the lender threw a fit.
Really?
The buyer, no, yeah, the buyer's lender threw a fit because they can't have somebody else living in the house that they've put a loan together on. So we had to do a different addendum, and the lender told me to do this,
Uh-huh.
that the underwriter didn't see, saying
Uh-huh.
that, you know, they did have another 30 days.
I got that too. So I just was curious.
So this is all about, you know, and this is a real important one these days, is post-closing possession, because 9 times out of 10, we're letting the seller stay there just to get the house. Kurt or Patrick, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I-
Patrick,
I do not. No, I do not. Thank you very much. That's been very informative.
good. All right. Well, I don't, you know, don't hold me to anything I've said, even though we're being recorded. All right, guys, do you guys have any questions?
No, I don't, but I just think this is so good, and I've learned some really good things today. And, you know, I would love to see the agents like watch this. I mean, gosh, this gap coverage and that post-closing possession, those are big. That's big about the seller having insurance.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
The
good.
buyer having insurance,
What?
the buyer having insurance.
And the buyer, yes, yeah.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, people.
Bye, people.
They can't see me. Why am I waving?
And I mean, obviously this isn't the first time I've heard it, but it's the one thing that gives me the most angst is
What?
the clauses, using them in the right place,
Uh-huh,
the right
mhm,
time, the right
mhm.
category, the right, so it presents our case well. And then, so, and I even have this, and I just am always constantly, but it does seem like I'll see, like, sometimes as you get more confident, maybe you tweak here or there, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
that's where I get nervous. I'm like, well, I'm not educated enough to know what to take out and what to.
I know, and you know
So-
what we do, a lot of times I write clauses and I think, gosh.
But you get to see more, like, and you've seen more coming back from like a listing standpoint where I haven't seen that yet. So, but it's helpful. It's always helpful. I carry them around with me.
Oh, I
Yeah,
use the
that's
camera on
good.
me
You
all
know, I
the
even
time.
have them, I even have
Uh-huh.
them in my,
Yeah.
my computer, just because I'm like, okay, which one do I like? But,
No, I think in this